Hello Wonderland, Kelly here. Out at sunrise on a July Sunday morning. Came about 2 hours from home this morning. I was up dark and early, hitting the road. And I don't have a full day wander planned today, but the stops that I am planning, I think are pretty cool. I'm starting here. Check this out. Getting my first look myself. If I can flip, there we are. I am at Burnside Farms, which in the spring they do tulips and flowers like that you can come here and see and photograph and pick. And in the summer they do sunflowers, and there are lots of sunflowers. I'm just seeing the first field right now. There's actually mazes and you can pick sunflowers. So this is a new thing for me. Haven't been here before. So we'll check this out. Things really just started blooming. They kind of stagger the plantings, so things bloom throughout about a 3 or 4 week period. So this is kind of the first week that one of the fields is in pretty full bloom. So hoping to get some neat shots here. And then I got a few other destinations ahead. Let's see if I can get lost in some sunflowers. So the idea at a place like this, I think, photographically, is to fill the frame with the subject, right? So I've got a field of sunflowers. I can get some different compositions, just completely filling the frame with sunflowers. A good way to do that, a wide angle works, of course, but then the flowers are pretty small. So using a telephoto, I've got the 70-200 with me right now, f4L. That'll let me zoom in and really fill the frame with some larger flowers. Now, I happen to also be here basically at sunrise, or not long after it. So that's going to provide me some interesting options as well to get some rim lighting, some sun flares, sun stars. Yeah, see how that looks too. All right, let me not waste light. Sun's already getting higher, but this is what I mean about backlighting, rim lighting. Got this beautiful field here with the sun rising in the distance there. So this is a great opportunity, and there's so many flowers. They're dense here. Yeah, great opportunity to fill the frame with flowers and also get that rim lighting and backlighting. Not sure if my attempts at sun stars are coming out. I don't know if the conditions aren't quite right. The trick to that, as far as it is a trick, is just to use a smaller aperture. I usually use like f10, which is pretty much all I'm using right now. And the blades of the aperture, kind of the points where they intersect, because apertures aren't usually perfectly round, yeah, they cause the sun star effect, which is neat when it works. All right, gonna shoot a little bit more here. By the way, I'm using the R5 this morning, and I've basically got the f4 Trinity. I do have the f4 Trinity, so the 14-35, 24-105, and 70-200 in the RF mount f4L. Great lenses, and I love that the caps are interchangeable, the front lens caps, so I can swap lenses, not even think about the caps, except for the rear caps, which still annoy me. But anyway, onward. Another thing I like when I'm shooting flowers is to kind of find one on its own a little bit, but where you can get a background of other flowers that'll be blurred in the distance a little bit. Works especially well if they're different colored flowers. Don't really have that going on here. Everything's pretty much shades of yellow and orange, but it's beautiful. Super nice. But anyway, I'm seeing this. I gotta stop saying, but anyway, I do that a lot. Okay, so I'm seeing this lone bloom right here with the flowers in the background. So I'm thinking get a nice composition with it large in the frame and other flowers kind of dotting the background in the bokeh. Let's see how that works. Fun stuff. Then I'll switch to the macro and get some close-ups. I haven't done that yet. Oh, I have the macro too, by the way, 100mm. Very handy for flowers. Sunflower overload here. I've stepped into one of the mazes, which is impressive. There's lots of birds flitting about in the sunflowers as well. I've seen some goldfinches. One that I think was an eastern phoebe, but it looked a little bigger than that. I'll have to ID it when I get home. I got a photo of it, but I don't have the 100 to 500 with me. But wow, this is just a lot. It's amazing. Definitely loving it. I apologize that all the pictures from this part of the excursion are sunflowers, but mostly. But that's what we're working with right now. Okay, stay tuned. I think these mazes are like the cornfield mazes that look like something from the air, but not sure what, and no drones are allowed because we're in restricted airspace. There's an airport not too far away in Manassas. This is in Nokesville, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. And the farm says no drones too. So federal and local regulations prohibit drone flights, which is fine. I do need to use my drone more though. Maybe later. Burnside Farms, amazing, really cool. Glad I did that. It's one of those things that only lasts a few weeks out of the year, so hit it while you can. Now, on to my next stop, which is the Bull Run Mountain Nature Conservancy, conservation area, something like that. Bull Run Mountains, anyway, which are the easternmost mountains in Virginia. And I should note, by the way, this area I'm exploring today, it's all about, say, 30 to 40 miles west of Washington, D.C. So a little bit north of me in Richmond, a little bit west of D.C. Nice area so far. I'm liking this. This park has a few trails. But the big loop is about 3.5 miles. So that's what I'm gonna do. It apparently goes through a few interesting plant neighborhoods, if you will. And hopefully lots of wildlife. It's near the interstate. I'm here in Interstate 66 behind me. But hopefully as I go, that noise will go away. So all right, let's take a walk here, see what we can see. As always, history is in sight. This area was a homestead called the Meadowlands, and this hole in the ground was their ice pit. They would keep ice down there, and it's a bit cooler in the shade and surrounded by earth, so it would stay ice longer. Pretty neat. There's a few cemeteries along this trail somewhere too. I'm hoping to come across those because I do enjoy that. All right, we continue. Check this out. Right along the trail here is this, which is the Chapman-Beverley mill. Originally built around 1737, I think. It was originally 5 stories, and then later they added 2 more floors to make it 7 stories, making it the tallest stacked stone building in the United States. Pretty neat. It was actually in use until the 1950s. It was wrecked during the Civil War, of course, because it was an important battle site around here, actually, and a part of the Confederate supply chain that the Union did not want to exist. So they ripped it up, and then it was restored and back in production until about 1951. And then actually as recently as 1998 is when it was burnt down again, but due to arson. So, would have been interesting to tour in there if it was still a thing. I thought it was supposed to be open, the site at least, open on the weekends. Maybe it's Friday, Saturday instead of Saturday, Sunday, or maybe I was too early. So when I'm done with this trail, I hope to check it out. I was hoping to get some drone shots of it, which I could do anyway. But the gate was closed at the time that I arrived here, so we'll see. I actually see another little trail that gets closer over there. I might check that out. Let's see. Yeah. There she is. Really neat. I'm only seeing 4 floors. Maybe it goes down further. I wonder if it went even higher before it burnt. Still, very cool. The mill, I'm shooting HDR just because of the play of shadow and light. I don't want to blow out the sky, but I want to keep the stone detail, so I probably don't necessarily need to shoot HDR, but call it a shortcut. Took a few HDRs at the sunflower farm as well, just to make sure I got good color, but mostly I didn't shoot HDR there. I'm still trying to be cognizant and not rely on HDR over much, just when I think it might be needed or helpful. So, it's a good tool to have in the bag. Had to backtrack just a little bit. Checked my map, realized I had skipped a little spur that goes to cemetery, the first cemetery. And it's pretty neat, so I'm glad I backtracked. It's not a very big one. Oh, that gate's heavy. Whew. Wrought iron. 1856. Do enjoy a good Grecian urn monument. So George Chapman, he was obviously associated with the Chapman Mill, so that makes sense. This would be the Chapman family cemetery. Some old stones. Very pretty, if not for the interstate noise. Get some pictures here and backtrack again. I just heard and then saw and photographed, hopefully, a chipmunk, which is not that exciting, but it excites me. So we didn't have chipmunks in Florida, and I've always liked them. They're just so cute. So that was a treat. And it's funny, because at home, I hate the squirrels, but I love the chipmunks. And they're really pretty similar. Size difference, color difference, tail difference, but you know, same general kind of creature. I'm just too used to squirrels. And chipmunks are cute. Okay. I have unbacktracked to where I turned around. So now I'm pressing onward. See what we see. There's a spot called Fern Hollow, actually, and that's what this trail is named after. And it sounds really pretty, so I do like ferns too. Hopefully it lives up to its name. Stay tuned. I should correct myself. I don't hate the squirrels. They're cute too. I don't mean to malign the gray squirrel as a species. But the bastards try to get my bird seed from my feeders. I can't blame them for that, but it's not for them. It's for the birds. They ought to know. Anyway, this is pretty. I like these shady little hollows. It's a nice trail so far, really. It's not real wide or well maintained, but it's clearly a trail, and it's very pretty. Okay, on we go. I don't see a sign for it or anything, but on the map this is labeled as the Upper Mill, and there's some ruins, as you can see here. Stone wall over here, some brick, little foundational pillars over there, I guess. There's something here. One time. I have to look into that. This is just a little spur off the main trail I was on, so now I will continue. Nice walk. Okay, definitely seeing where the Fern Hollow name comes from. Lots of ferns. And I love that because ferns like shade, and so do I. It's not too hot today, actually. That's one of the reasons I came up this way. I mean, the sunflowers was the main attraction, but if it'd been 90 degrees out, I probably wouldn't have wanted to do that even early in the morning. So I think the high today up here is probably only about 84 Fahrenheit, of course, which is not bad for the middle of July, especially considering out west they're dealing with 100, 110 degrees ambient temperature, not even the feels like. That's rough. It's kind of why we moved out of Florida. I've probably said before, just getting too hot. I grew up there, and it was not that bad when I was a kid, at least as far as I remember. These days it's just summer for 9 months down there. It's not ideal. I'm going back in a few weeks for Halloween Horror Nights, as is my annual tradition, and to visit the office because I work down there. Work remotely, but that's where I'm based. Yeah, and that'll be end of August, early September, and I'm sure it'll still be 95 degrees. So that part I'm not looking forward to. But the rest, I do love Halloween Horror Nights. Look forward to a video on that. Okay, back to this beautiful trail. Do enjoy a good muddy rocky stream crossing. Kind of wish this creek was actually running. Seems like the kind of creek that only runs after a rain, and it has been a dry few days. Anyway, I was thinking while I'm walking here, I brought up HDR, and I don't know that I've talked too much about that other than mentioning me trying to get away from it because I used to do it way too much. So, and I had a comment a while back. Someone said they liked the HDR photos that I'd included in a video because you don't see much of that anymore. And I was like, really? Am I the only one who's still doing it? So, with modern mirrorless cameras, it's not as necessary, like I said, which is kind of why I'm trying to get away from it. But it's still a useful tool to have. And pull it out when you need it. And how do you know when you need it? That's a good question. So let's, I'm kind of going to start at the beginning and pretend you don't know what HDR even is. So apologies if you do. But it means high dynamic range. And it's basically just blending multiple frames together to expand the dynamic range that you're capturing in the image. Kind of compressing it, if you will. If you're familiar with audio compression, where you turn the loudest parts down and the quietest parts up, that's basically what you're doing with HDR, just with light. So, dynamic range, it's a measure in stops of exposure between the brightest part of your image or scene and the darkest shadows. So, the most extreme example I can think of is when you're inside a dark tunnel and shooting towards one of the entrances on a bright sunny day. So if you expose for the tunnel, you'll blow out the entrance and it'll just be a white portal. But if you expose for the entrance, what you can see outside the tunnel, then what you can see of the interior will just be totally black. Got it? With me so far? Hold on. So what you would do in that tunnel scenario is take a shot or two to expose properly for what's outside the tunnel, and then take a shot to expose some detail inside the tunnel, and then you blend those together. And there's software tools to do it. Lightroom does it within itself. It has a good HDR merge functionality that has ghost removal as well, so if something moves a little bit between frames. I usually use 3 frames. You can use as many as you want, really. There's not much point in using a whole lot, even for a really wide range dynamic scene. 3, and I do neutral, -2, +2 for the exposure values, and that usually does it for anything that's not too crazy, especially on a mirrorless camera that already has decent, or better than decent, dynamic range on the sensor. So yeah, let me pause here because this creek is nice. Nice. So the tunnel thing is an extreme example, obviously. But in real life, you might come into it in a scene like this. So I'm in the forest, pretty good leaf canopy above me, which is kind of like a tunnel, right? But there's spots where bright light is coming through. And this isn't enough bright light to really demonstrate my point. If there was a bigger patch, that would be something that I would use HDR on, right? So I want to expose for the detail, being under the canopy in the forest, in the shade, but I don't want those bright spots to blow out completely. So yeah. Or if you're shooting, say, the shady side of a building under a clear sky or with clouds, you don't want to blow out the sky, but you want to capture detail in the building. So those are examples of where HDR might serve you well. Depending on how extreme it is, your camera might do a good enough job capturing enough shadow and highlight. And the thing to remember there is it's a lot easier to bring out shadow detail if you underexpose than it is to bring back highlights if you've overexposed. So some photographers just underexpose to begin with, if they're taking just one shot even, because for that reason it's easier to bring up your shadow detail in post than it is to recover blown highlights. And when I'm shooting HDR, I kind of do the same thing. So my neutral 0 exposure value shot will be a little underexposed usually. I'll tend to meter on somewhere between the sky or the brightest spot and mid-range. Yeah, and then my +2, my overexposed shot for the shadow detail will be good. And then my underexposed shot for the sky will be a little darker even than it would have been if I'd kind of done a neutral exposure. And that'll give me more sky detail and less blown highlights. So yeah. So if I can find a scene up ahead, hopefully on the trail, that has a good mix of shadow and light, I'll do some comparisons kind of between non-HDR and HDR just to give you an idea. That's the plan. Taking a little sit-down break. Feels like I climbed a small mountain. Because I did. Yeah, these Bull Run mountains, not really familiar with them, but if they're really the easternmost mountains in the US, they're really not very big. This whole area of mountains, the Blue Ridge and the Appalachians, are ancient. Ancient. They were mountains before life actually existed on the planet. That ancient. But they've been worn down over time, so all that's really left is the granite. Whew. So they could be higher. Glad they're not. It's been a great walk though. It's starting to warm up. Definitely warming up. So I think I'm over halfway done on this loop, I'm sure. So when I get back to the car, I'm going to see if the mill is open. Maybe drone it either way. Might even be better if it's closed. If I drone it, we'll see. But then I'll grab lunch and then I'll head home. Not a full day out today, but so far it's been quite rewarding.
still looking for a good scene to kind of do that HDR comparison. So once I catch my breath and start downhill, keep an eye out. And if Bull Run rings a bell for you, that would probably because it was the area of a battle, actually 2 battles in the Civil War. Really, I know them both as Manassas. So there was First Manassas and Second Manassas. I want to say first was 1862, and then the other was either 1863 or 4. But I think the first one, First Manassas, is also referred to as the Battle of Bull Run. So that's where that might ring a bell. Ooh, that's bright. Would be a good HDR sample, but it's not that pretty. So we'll find something. Yeah, now we're talking. Right along the trail here are the ruins. Well, more than ruins. It's abandoned, but it's not falling apart too bad. But an old house. And I know it's on the map. Now I forget the name of it. But I'm going to go down the trail a little. Yeah, okay. This is a scene worth photographing. And of course now the sun goes behind a cloud, but a minute ago it was a pretty good mix of shadow and light. So I think that would be good to show. All right, let me find an angle. Set up this little thing on a tripod, and then we'll take some shots. Okay, so off to the side of the trail a bit, there's this moss-covered log. I'm not sure if you can see it over here, that's fallen, and I like the color and texture that that'll provide me. It's a little, the mold or moss is kind of faded, so might not be great, but you can see generally pretty even lighting, but I've got some hot spots on the brick fireplace. Over here to the left, if I get that, and to the right, there's some more sun. So this isn't really an extreme scene that needs HDR, but I'm going to do it anyway, just to show you the difference and how you can process both of them. So I'm starting out in HDR. I actually have one of my custom modes, I might have mentioned this before, set to HDR, so I don't have to turn on and off bracketing. So as soon as I switch to that mode, I've got it on C2. I'm at ISO 200 and f8 in aperture priority mode. So it adjusts the shutter speed for me depending on where I meter. So if I look at this scene right away, it wants to put me at 1/40th of a second. And that means my overexposed shot plus 2 would be like 1/10. I think that's right. And that's okay, I can handhold that, but I'm just going to crank the ISO up to, I'm going to go 640. Then if I meter, I'm at 1/200th, or 1/60th actually. Okay, as my default exposure. But what I'm going to do is actually make that about 1/250th, underexpose a little bit, right? So if I go up towards the sky, I can get 1/250, half press the shutter to lock that in, recompose. I'm at f8. I want to frame it so I'm not getting this tree over here on my left, but I want to get the log and the house. Boom, boom, boom. This is the R5, so it can't do brackets in electronic shutter mode, which is kind of annoying. Has to be in either mechanical or electronic first curtain, whatever. The R7 does brackets in electronic shutter, which makes them really fast at high speed, so I don't know why this doesn't. I'm hoping they'll add that in a firmware update. But then the R5 Mark II will come along and it won't matter because that'll do it, I'm sure. Okay, so that's not bad. I'm going to take a few. In fact, I'm going to take a portrait orientation to get more of the trees up above me here. So again, I'm going to shoot for 1/250th. There it is. Focusing on the house. Actually, this one I'm going to focus on this tree. Fallen tree. I don't think it'll matter too much. Nice. I'm going to chimp. When you're chimping your brackets, you want to make sure you've got some blue sky, if there's sky in the picture, because that tells you you didn't blow out the sky, and you'll be able to bring that color out more if you so desire. Okay, So I was at ISO 640. I'm going to switch to manual to do my one shot. I'm going to do that same ISO. I'm going to do f8 again. And here again, I'm going to underexpose at my 250th. Which really, I already got this shot, didn't I? As part of my brackets. But I'll take one anyway. And my portrait. All right. Pretty pleased with that. I think I'll stick around here for a minute and get some more little detail shots. And of course the sun kind of went behind a cloud there again, so that might not even be a perfect comparison. But I can use one from the HDR brackets as a single shot if I need to. So we'll do that. Okay. I hope this has been instructive. See how it comes out. Getting close to the end of the trail. It's been a bit of up and down hill, which, you know, Bull Run Mountains makes sense. It's been pretty. So if you've suffered through more than one of my videos, and thank you if that's the case, you've probably noticed I'm a big fan of looking down the trail shots. I don't really know why. It's a nice way to capture the sense of a place, a walk, I guess. And compositionally speaking, I like the leading line that the trail provides to kind of take your eye deeper into the photograph. So there's that. But you might ask, how do I know when it's a good spot for a looking down the trail shot? I don't know that either. It's just one of those things, you know. It can't be too cluttered. It can't just be a bunch of random trees. It has to be something that makes it a little more interesting, like a curve in the trail, maybe going around a bend. Interstate is loud. I'm getting close to it again. An interesting tree alongside the trail or hanging out over it, maybe. Things like that. It's kind of what trips my trigger to pull up the camera and take a shot. So hopefully I've been sharing a couple that I got on today's outing as I've been talking about it. So the mill grounds are still closed. The gate is closed, but that's okay, because I don't know that I'd get a good photo or a better photo of it than I did from across the railroad tracks. So instead, I'm going to drone it a little bit, which is actually better, I think, if they're closed. Because then I won't be flying over anybody, which is always good. And there's nobody to spot me. So I found a nice spot in the shade, not too far from the gate. Put the drone up. Got my neutral density 8 filter on there. That's probably a good, it's really sunny, so I could probably go with a 16 or even 32, but I want to get both video and photos, so I don't want to cut my exposure down too much, or I could end up with blurry photos. So yeah, get this going, and here's some footage, hopefully. think that was successful. I only crashed the drone once, and that was right when it was landing and no damage done, so success. I think I got some good stuff there, which you probably already saw. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, go get lunch, head home. As always, hope you're doing wonderful wherever you are. Be kind to yourself, take care of each other. Don't forget to be awesome. Get out and wander. Till next time. Bonus content. I was driving home and I spotted a biplane in the distance. So I looked and then I saw a sign, and it's a little air show at this little airfield somewhere in Fauquier County, Virginia. They're doing biplane rides. I'm so tempted, but I don't know, $100. 180 for the aerobatic one, which looks pretty impressive. I'd probably lose my lunch though. Anyway, cool. So I'm getting some shots of the biplanes. Right now they're just doing rides. The air show itself starts at 2:30. Maybe I'll hang out for that. It's about hour, 45 minutes from now. But anyway, yeah, exciting. You never know what you're gonna come across. So here's some shots, and then I'll say goodbye again. All right, I'll call it a day there. Now I'm really gonna go home. Promise. I won't say goodbye again, but till next time, get out and wander. Later.